Good afternoon, and thank you all for your time today. I am so excited to be here with you all celebrating our 2023 National Day of Empathy. My name is Ashley Goldon, and I am the Executive Director of Nation Outside, a statewide grassroots and advocacy organization entirely led by the justice impacted and formerly incarcerated. I am formerly incarcerated. I served 3 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections as a young person, but today I'm a final year 4.0 doctoral candidate at the University of Southern California, studying leadership and system innovation around smart justice. Today, we're going to be talking about Nation Outside's theory of change, collective carceral impact. We'll be talking about some of our initiatives designed at addressing CCI. And finally, we'll hear feedback and reflections from House Representative Kristian Gant, representing District 82 on the west side of the state. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Nation Outside, we represent the over 3 million Michigan families impacted by the criminal legal system. We call ourselves the voice of the formerly incarcerated because collectively our small but mighty team has over 400 years of lived experience within state and federal corrections institutions. We also have a growing base of over 7,000 directly impacted members and allies ready to take action in our 11 regional chapters that span the state. Our mission is to drive policy and practice reforms that build transformative systems of support for justice-impacted families and communities. And we accomplish this through trauma-informed leadership, advocacy, training, and education. The foundation of our work at Nation Outside is all about challenging stigma, breaking barriers, amplifying voices, and empowering our communities. Now, because our population faces over 44,000 additional barriers that impact every facet of our lives, our advocacy and innovation at Nation Outside must go far and beyond that of just the criminal punishment system to address issues of disenfranchisement, housing barriers, neighborhood disadvantage, employment and educational restrictions, and economic and health disparities. All of the work in our holistic person and environment portfolio centers around the promotion of community-led, evidence-informed system innovation, focused on addressing barriers to reentry, the needs of impacted communities, and the root causes of incarceration. With 1 in 3 people impacted by the system, we know our voices are powerful. We are an entire nation outside. If there's a barrier, we seek to address it. There's no system we won't work with. We worked with trade unions, financial institutions, hospitals, municipalities, and countless others to create more safe and inclusive hiring, lending, and service practices. Now today, we're gonna start by talking about the problem. You see, how you view the problem is important because it affects how you design its solutions. Mass incarceration and recidivism have been around for more than half a century, and many of us assume that we already know the problem. But the traditional lens in which we've been viewing these problems has been far too narrow. There is a dominant framework ruling the human service fields, and if there are any social workers on the call, this may sound familiar. It's called person and environment, or Brofenbrenner's ecological systems theory. This puts the individual in the center, making them the focal point of the problem. All interventions and accountability are targeted at the individual person, who is the bullseye. The problem with applying this lens to impacted populations is that it ignores larger system influencers, concealing the real gatekeepers of the problem in the peripheral. It assumes that the little guy in the middle is powerful enough to overcome the larger issues that continue to set us back. At Nation Outside, we contend that in order to design effective policy and practice innovation that truly addresses the root causes of the carceral system, we must place the real problem in the center. The United States did not become the world's leader of mass incarceration without bad policy, and we will not be able to service delivery or mental health counsel our way out of this one. We at Nation Outside know that those closest to the power are our elected officials, department and agency heads, the governor, the secretary of state, the lobbyists, university regents, those gatekeepers that can change and move and fund. Their culture, values, and decisions influence those second most proximate to power in the middle, the meso layer, the bank managers, the small and local facing business owners, school admissions offices, property management companies, homeless shelters, grocery stores, etc. Their decisions trickle down to impact all of us on the ground at the micro level. Our family, friends, neighbors, children, coworkers, frontline workers, corrections officers, law enforcement. You see, this allows us to take into account that long after your sentence is over, system barriers continue, making it exponentially difficult to live well and achieve stability for our families. We've coined the effects of these barriers, the collective carceral impact, which represents a new ecological approach to understanding barriers post-incarceration. It places the real problem in the bullseye, the carceral system itself. Collective carceral impact is the culmination of public, private, and natural consequences we face after having been incarcerated or otherwise affected by the criminal punishment system. CCI are the micro, meso, and macro system level influencers that exacerbate poor health and wellness and increase the likelihood of returning to jail and prison. First, you have the public sanctions, or what some refer to as the collateral consequences of criminal conviction, C4. We call it C4 because it goes boom. If you haven't heard of these, don't feel bad. Scholars often refer to C4 as invisible because they were deemed ineligible for Eighth Amendment protections under case law. This oversight has translated to the body of research and thus the solutions and funding structures that underwrite them. Public sanctions are codified in the federal, state, and local statutes. These restrictions are largely employment and licensure related, but also include restrictions on housing, zoning, proprietorship, and transportation. The National Inventory of Collateral Consequences cites over 44,000 of them, 837 of which are specific to our state here in Michigan. Public sector consequences are not to be confused with private sector restrictions, which are also largely employment related, but could include things like the bank canceling your credit card or mortgage, or blanket housing bans in the private market. Private sector restrictions usually come in the form of formal black and white administrative policies and are usually at the discretion of management. 9 in 10 landlords screen applicants through background checks. And I'll tell you, you have to have thick skin if you want to succeed post-incarceration. I was denied employment and housing more times than I can count. I had to move 9 times in 9 years relying on friends and family for housing. And I can assure you that even with the best of friends, they're not guaranteed to be there for you 100% of the time, especially not 5, 10, and 20 years down the line. 12 years out and a sheriff badge later, I'm still running into barriers. If I were to lose my job in housing today, guaranteed I'd be back at square one. Now that leads us into our third and final type of collective carceral impact, the micro level effects, or the natural, residual, and personal consequences of incarceration. These consequences are summarized from a series of focus groups we conducted last year with our partners at MySemi, where we engaged hundreds of impacted people from across the state. Some of the responses we heard include how it feels when your spouse and children look at you after getting denied a job for the 8th time, the abuse and exploitation you and your children have to endure from domestic abuse because you can't get approved for housing, the family disrepair from years of limited visitation and phone calls, the loss of parental rights, personal assets, putting up with racial discrimination and sexual harassment because you're just happy to finally have a job, not being adept at how to use the phone and computer, suffering the health fallout of lacking access to fresh air, food, water, love, and quality routine medical care for years at a time. Community and voter disenfranchisement are also widely prevalent, and its effects grossly underestimated. White 2019 found that even a short-term jail stay for a misdemeanor offense is shown to cause voter disenfranchisement. This is important because research shows that it's indicative of lower rates of service utilization and community connectedness. If people don't feel connected, they don't access services. Now, when we compare what research says to the causal drivers of incarceration with our CCI, we start to understand why incarceration is such a vicious cycle. Let's take a look real fast. You see, for each causal factor on the left side, it can be traced back to a component of CCI on the right. Housing insecurity is exacerbated by housing and zoning restrictions. Neighborhood disadvantage exacerbated by employment restrictions and prison gerrymandering. Poor health from lack of income, neighborhood disadvantage and disenfranchisement. Lack of income from unemployment exacerbated by public and private employment restrictions. Lack of social support, education, civic and community participation, poor leisure. All found to be criminogenic risks, but all connect to disenfranchisement, housing restrictions, and neighborhood disadvantage. If incarceration is a social determinant of health, then CCI is the mechanism by which it arose. This is why the CDC has incarceration sitting within the social and community context of SDOH, because it interfaces and affects all aspects of social and community life. It's what we call a wicked problem. But fear not, because Nation Outside has designed initiatives that address the full gamut of CCI. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about them, beginning with our civic engagement and voting rights work. Civic empowerment is at the foundation of our work. Let's take a look.
I remember going into the jail, and it was, we took a team and we went into jail to register, everybody in the jail to vote. Once we got involved, we started getting calls from people and saying, man, you guys register every year, but we never get a chance to exercise our right to vote. The light bulb went off, we got to do something.
The numbers say that the more people are engaged, especially civically engaged, and we're talking about justice impacted people, the more they're civically engaged, the less likely they are to recidivate or return to a life of crime.
And throughout Michigan, there were over 10,000 people that were eligible to vote. And we were like, hold on, these people are being disfranchised. That was the first time I knew that what we were doing was something that was needed and something that would really propel us to the next level.
We went into the Genesee County Jail and interviewed people that were held that voted for the first time, right, while they were in Genesee County Jail. And I think that made a huge impact on these folks, right?
And so what we did is establish that we would be deputized to be able to handle ballots, to be able to do the duty, civil duty, which is a constitutional right for any person that resides in the jail that hasn't been sentenced. They have a right to vote. This here is a lot bigger than what we're thinking. This here is more about giving people not only a voice, but empowering some people.
Civic engagement in voting is undeniably how we amplify our voices and get our needs met at a policy level. Last year, we engaged Genesee County Jail and Wayne County Jail, which resulted in almost 2,000 impacted people being able to vote. Once we have our voices heard, the next most important need is our safety and security. Housing is undeniably at the center of our ability to thrive and represents our most basic of needs. But for impacted people, this is undeniably one of our greatest challenges post-release. Let's take a look.
After you've seen so much pain, you become like kind of immune to it. So I'm okay, you know what I'm saying? But I'm dealing with a lot, but I'm okay, because God made me go through this. I was blessed with the opportunity to buy a house. My first time ever being able to do it. And I started moving stuff in, get my kids in there, and I could start having them spend the night. Their mothers ain't paranoid because I ain't living house to house no more. We living now. So I got a house now, so I'm feeling good. I just got out of prison, I'm good. I get a wake up early one morning, me and my kids over there, they spend the night. It's the people from Florida that own the house saying that we are over here illegally. Come to find out, the house was sold to me fraudulently. I lost all my money in it. My kids was wondering like, Dad, what's going on? They don't know what's going on, you know what I'm saying? And this is my first time after being in prison trying to be a dad. And that happened. Housing is one of the biggest things that affects us post-incarceration. They got this thing on the applications, all of them. Have you been convicted of a felony? They basically deny. After doing so long in prison, we don't know the formalities to go through. We just think, okay, wait, give me the house, give me the keys, we want to cut the swimmers on, cut the water on, we in here. There's no classes for this. So last year, as I was getting out of prison, see this girl here? It's my daughter. She lost her life tragically as I was getting out of prison. So when you talk about a person who don't want to do wrong no more, you lose a child, man. That shit change you. I'm tired of hurting her brothers and sisters. I ain't been in their life, never. I've been on the streets all my life, right? I'm just tired of hurting my kids. And this is the reason why I want to change. I don't care. I don't care if somebody hurt me right now, somebody can kill me, smack me, whatever. I'm not doing nothing wrong no more because I got to be there for them. I lost a daughter. So that's why I do it. Yeah. That's why I do it.
Now today we have our Nation Outside Policy Director here to talk about Nation Outside's efforts around housing. Please welcome to the screen, Nation Outside Policy Director, Tony Gant.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Ashley. That was amazing as always. I want to thank everybody for coming out. And I'm gonna be as brief as possible as I talk about housing. Like Ashley and like rest of the team, I'm formerly incarcerated as well. I spent 20 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections from 1995 to 2015. But more important than that, I'm a father now, right, of a 5-year-old and an author and a small business owner who still struggles with housing personally. And so this is an issue that, because of our collective wisdom, we know is in the forefront for people leaving incarceration or just people with criminal convictions in general. For the last 4 years, Nation Outside has been working hard around housing access. And true to who we are as grassroots organization, we tend to build our movements from the ground up. And so much of our work thus far has been at the local municipal level. Early on in Detroit, we were involved with the Fair Chance Housing movement that led to the passage of the first ordinance in the state of Michigan in 2019, right? That next year, I believe Kalamazoo passed the Fair Chance Housing Ordinance. And then in 2021, Jackson and then Ann Arbor also passed Fair Chance Housing Ordinances. These local ordinances are designed to limit the discretion that landlords have in denying housing to people based on their criminal record. Present day, right, we're working in Flint, we're working in Lansing, and we're working in East Lansing to pass local ordinances to address these concerns. We have a lot of traction locally in these districts to get this done. Also last year, we had an amazing bill, the Fair Chance at Housing Act that was introduced by Representative Abraham Ayash. We anticipate that this bill will be reintroduced this session. And we have high hopes that we'll be able to change the state of Michigan and put Michigan on the map as a state that has solved this problem of discrimination against people with criminal records. There's little, if we could think about it, and I'm not gonna get on my soapbox, but it's important for us to understand that one of the fundamental things that we all need is somewhere to live. Everybody on this call should get on board with our push to give housing access to people with criminal records. This is paramount because we're fighting to get people home, and we need to make sure once we get people home that they have access to housing. Thank you.
Tony, thank you so much for that. And just a quick follow-up to that. I think that the notion, we have to think about why criminal background checks are actually used. And I would say that it's kind of counterintuitive. Can you explain to the audience why using criminal history checks does not actually improve public safety?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked me that question. The notion is that we do criminal background checks for the most part to predict future behavior, right? That's what we do. The way the criminal background checks, and I'm gonna use myself as an example, the way a criminal background check would work for me individually is it would look back to this 1994 conviction and say that as a 50-year-old, I am prone to still commit this type of act. The criminal background check is flawed because it doesn't take into account all the other things that I've accomplished since that time. It doesn't take into account that I am now 50, right? And I've, for the most part, aged out of that type of behavior. It doesn't take into account that I'm a business owner or a father or someone who's married or someone who has a doctorate degree. The criminal background check is fundamentally flawed because it looks back in time and tries to predict future behavior or present day behavior based on mistakes people often made decades ago.
Thank you. See, once we have housing and stability, now we can focus on excelling in our education and careers. But we again face sometimes what seems as insurmountable obstacles. We just want to live. Second chance hiring and admissions is a must if we want people to be able to follow through with the restorative process, not to mention if we want our communities to thrive. Let's take a look.
Starting out with knowing nothing, I didn't know what tomorrow was gonna bring, I didn't know what, and yet yesterday we signed papers on a house. So we just bought a house.
When I was asked one of the reasons why I wanted out of prison is because I wanted to be a member of society, right? And being able to get a good job and make a decent living is being a member of society,
My parole officer, she was adamant about me finding a job. And she laid it out, you've got so many days. I want you to have a job in so many days, or I may send you back. So when I got the opportunity, and got the job, it was such a relief. It was great. Such a great feeling.
It felt real good because, I wasn't sure that I was gonna get a chance. So.
When I started out as a temp, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And here it is 8 years later, and now I'm an operator, and I'm making over twice as much of what it was when I first started.
I started out at the bottom, worked my way up. I just bought a truck. First time I've ever owned an asset like that, ever.
It's a rough road, but it can be traveled, and you can get out the other side. After all that time there, and then parole, and now I'm standing here. I've got a job, and 8 years on that job. We just bought a house. I've got 2 cars. And I've made it.
Absolutely, and it feels so good to make it, but unfortunately that can be transient because at any moment, if you lose that stability, you're back at square one. Now today we have Jessica Henry, Nation Outside's Manager of Engagement, to talk a little bit more about clean slate and second chance practices. Please welcome to the screen, Jessica Henry.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So what is clean slate and fair chance hiring? Fair chance hiring is, it addresses the issues of the application process in 2 main ways. So fair chance hiring means that employers will remove questions about conviction history from job applications unless required by state or federal law. and only consider a job candidate's criminal history after a conditional offer has been made. Ban the Box is also adopted so that employers consider a job candidate's qualifications first without the stigma of a conviction or arrest. And as Tony was talking about earlier, the criminal background check, it goes right to their past instead of taking into consideration the present skills and qualifications of an individual. Criminal background checks cut out a large portion of eligible workforce participants, leaving our economy in need of filling job positions. In April of 2021, the US reached a record high of 9.3 million job openings, which could have been filled by those who were denied due to criminal background checks. As you saw in the video, Robert and Doug, two successful employees for a second chance hiring partner, have criminal histories. They were looked at through their qualifications and their skills to determine their job position. And then after they were determined qualified, their hirer, Industrial Steel, took a chance with them. And you see the emotion behind them that they want it, that they deserve it, just like any other human individual. We are all equal in that point. And just to see the successes that we have within our returning citizens world is important for not only our economy, businesses, communities, but our families as well, because just to have our basic needs met, like housing, employment is also needed in that as well. Absolutely. So today, Fair Chance Hiring and Ban the Box are two important initiatives that Nation Outside is doing.
Well said, Jessica. And, we should never underestimate that drive and that desire for people to want to get back on track with their life. When we had that expungement fair last year in Detroit, we had over 3,000 people show up, and we could not meet the need. The line was all the way to the Southfield Freeway, but it represented the great hope and desire that people have to get their life together. And Jessica, you recently had an issue. You've been doing a lot to get yourself on track. You're on a rocket ship. I tell you that all the time. But you recently had an issue yourself with background checks just last month. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your struggle and what do you think employers who are hesitant should know?
So I was incarcerated for 9 years of my life. When I got out, while I was in, I was able to attain 3 associate's degrees from Jackson College. Upon my release, May of 2020, I was enrolled at Spring Arbor University, and I graduate in May. My internship started this semester, and I had an internship lined up, Offender Success, which is a second chance reentry. They're amazing, but their background check for Catholic Social Services, I'm just going to call them, I'm not calling anybody out, but it's policy. And that's what we do here, is we address policy. So I was denied my internship. The email that I received was, "We're sorry to inform you, but we cannot support your internship due to liability after your background check." And as a human being, I felt rejected, discouraged. This is my dream position. Re-entry and advocacy is what I do. It's a passion. It's something I would do for free on a daily basis because I love this work. I love seeing individuals receive second chances. And for me to feel that way and not even have my qualifications addressed, just that blemish on my record from 11 years ago, and I'm still being denied from that. So I think that employers should take into consideration a face-to-face meeting or interview with an individual to see if they do have the qualifications and skills that are going to make their business a success. Because somebody who has been incarcerated knows what it's like to have that loss, knows what it's like to have nothing. So for them to go into it open mind, ready, knowing, hey, I can do this because I'm changed. I'm not my past. I'm not the stigma that society has placed upon me. I am moving forward with my life. I just need someone to see that and acknowledge that I am qualified. So I do believe employers should first take into account the skills and qualifications before the full transparency of a criminal history.
Thank you, Jessica. And we are working hand in hand with Michigan Department of Corrections and our offender success partners. They've been really, really great. And those contracts are, put out for bid. And I think they're being put out for bid this year. So we are, doing our due diligence to try to change policy, not just at the legislative level, but at that administrative level, so that people don't run into these barriers. Jessica is a standout, rock star student at Spring Arbor University. She has a great track record of keeping a job, being passionate. And there's, it's so egregious that she's being barred from the very career that she has so much expertise in. Now, the national recidivism average over 9 years is sitting at 83%. Now, that is astounding, and I hope everyone's jaws aren't on the floor. But we have to do better with designing and scaling effective solutions. And that begins with designing reentry interventions that are specifically tailored for reentry. A lot of times, the reentry interventions that we see were actually solutions built for other things, right? Housing interventions were really built for people experiencing homelessness, right? Mental health counseling was designed for people experiencing mental health issues. The issue is that reentry, interfaces with all of these things, and we need much more comprehensive continuums of care. Now, that takes us into our final initiative we'll be covering today, which is our peer-led reentry initiative. Let's take a look.
There's only two things that can happen once you go to prison. And that's, you're either going to die in prison or you're going to get out. There's nothing else that can happen. So if I'm going to get out, you want me to prosper and move forward, don't you?
For this reentry program, you're incarcerated. You don't know what family members you can trust because wasn't none of them there for you when you was locked up. So why the hell do I want to go home and sleep next to a person that didn't even write me a letter?
We already have a mindset of, the world is against us. So when we're trying to change our lives or trying to just find our own way, we're probably not going to reach out to the individual that doesn't know where we're coming from.
I didn't have nobody but me. So therefore I had to look out for me. I went and ventured out to the world myself. Went and started staying with a few people. Slept on this person's couch for a couple of days till I figured it out. Asked my friend, I'm home, girl, what y'all got up? Let me come over there and stay for a minute. I'm just trying to feel my way. I'm making them think I'm okay, I'm stable, I got a home, I got a job, I'm doing good. I was fucked up.
I served 34 years in prison, 2 years on parole, and when I re-entered society, there was no help or no guidance other than that which I got from my peers.
I know, man. I'm glad you wanted.
Peer-led reentry programs is the catalyst of making sure individuals like myself become successful. Just knowing that your peer has went through something similar, it speaks volumes within themselves. So I think we're in the right position to actually help individuals. We're not telling people where to go. We're providing options, choices. Because a lot of us have the mentality that we don't have choices. We don't have options.
We're in there with women, thousands of women. And it's like, I can't wait to get away from these people. And once I'm out, I need those people. I need those people. I've grown up with those people. They've become my friends, my family, and I need those people.
I'm gonna pull down the street and get behind you. I'm about to text Ashley right now to ask her.
This individual that you are interviewing right now didn't have this mindset. I was the knucklehead. I got into prison not knowing what was going on, believing the stigmas. But someone seen something in me. They took me up under their wing and they showed me the do's and the don'ts. They helped me navigate prison. And they also told me and showed me how important it was for me to have a plan and to constantly think about what my life is going to be outside.
If you walking all day around a yard, you can walk down the street and get what you got to get to survive. We're in a community now doing what we're doing because it's gonna help me to help others. It's gonna give me an outlet as well as me giving other people outlets.
Tell them to get out there and vote. Tell them it's important. I wouldn't know who to talk to first coming out. I had to rely on family members that were formerly incarcerated, get bits and pieces of information from them, and then organizations like this. They gave me a chance to navigate, if you will, through all the barriers that society has put on us.
We've already been through that journey. We've already overcome those obstacles. Who better to lead the way and show someone else? I mean, it changed my life when I realized that, hey, these doors can open for us too.
That's right. And today we have our Washtenaw Regional Coordinator, LaQuan, who is also a peer mentor with A Brighter Way, one of our inaugural partner sites for peer-led reentry, scheduled to take off in April. Please also welcome to the screen Representative Kristian Grant. Representative Grant was born and raised in the heart of the 82nd House District in Grand Rapids, where she is serving as a first-term state representative and the first Black woman to ever be elected to a state seat in Kent County. Rep. Grant has dedicated over 15 years to community and economic development. Grant values the necessity of grassroots work and understands the importance of pairing it with effective policy that makes generational change. She believes tangible, constructive progress at the community level is contingent on three pillars: affordable housing, economic development, and education. The first pillar, quality, affordable housing, is central to Grant's work. She believes families deserve to have a home that is safe, clean, and affordable. She is dedicated to working with colleagues in the legislature and those at the local level to find solutions and provide residents with viable housing options, including pathways to home ownership. Please welcome to the screen Representative Grant and LaQuan. Thank you so much for joining us today. My first question is for LaQuan. LaQuan, can you elaborate on why reentry should be peer-led and why that aspect is so important?
Thank you. It's a good question. One, because it helped me, plain and simple, it helped me. I was able to talk to somebody with relatable experience. I was able to actually see them succeed. So, I mean, think about it. Would you go, okay, so if a person is trying to become a musician, a professional pianist, right? Would you go to a plumber for the advice on how to be successful? No. How can you? They have no information on how you can actually be a successful musician. So why not go to a peer? Someone with relatable experiences. They have traveled some of these roads. They have broke down a lot of the barriers. I like to consider the work that I do as navigators, right? And just like any other GPS, it gives you options. When you punch in the coordinates, you might not know exactly where you want to go, but you got an idea. So when you punch in the address or the street or whatever, it gives you multiple roads to travel. One road might be the fastest route, but you have to avoid this, or it might give you avoid this route because of the traffic or whatever like that, right? Well, peers who have been formerly incarcerated, who are being successful, who are being positive role models out here, are doing just that. We're giving individuals those routes. We're providing options. So when an individual comes home who is returning from being incarcerated, a lot of us have that mindset that, what do I do next? Where do I go? How do I stay out? Well, I can tell you, sign up. Go join Nation Outside, right? Go seek out organizations that have people in it with relatable experiences, that have been where you're at.
Right.
Don't go to the plumber.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to actually steal that analogy from you. So don't be surprised if you hear it and pop up in my talking points at my next speaker.
I don't like it.
My next question is for Representative Grant. Thank you again for joining us. Given all you've heard today, what are your thoughts on some policy solutions for this legislative cycle?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the work that you do. Constantly, when people are talking to me about what do I think is important and, what am I going to do in the legislature, I'm always like, it's not a me, it's a we thing. Like, I cannot effectively do my job without being connected to the people who are living and experiencing the issues that I'm focused on every day. And whatever I do in the Capitol will not work if we don't have people in the streets talking about the importance of it, letting people know about it, right? Like there are some laws that are in effect that people just don't know about. And, if we're not talking to each other and building that community, then we don't see the full circle result. So I just want to start off saying that thank you so much for this important work. As I was listening today, that was just all I could think about. Like, I was just so proud to see you guys doing this work and the impact that it's having. But when we look at legislatively, some of the things that can happen, and I'll just kind of go based on the pillars I've heard you guys talk about, when it comes to voting, like one of the main issues is that a lot of people do not think they can vote. They come home, they don't think that they can vote, and so it is, what is the work that we're doing, uplifting your work and adding to it to share that knowledge, because people should know that even if I'm gone right now and when I come home, I can be having input to shape the world that I'm coming back home to, right? And to shape what's there. And that allows some of that ownership that the system tries to strip away from us when we go through these things. Another thing, and these are just simple things, but I heard LaQuan speak to it. When you come home, you want to know what's next. And so I'm working on a package of expungement bills. So kind of cleanup bills from the first clean slate portion. And in that package, one of the bills just simply says when someone is being sentenced, if they are found guilty, right then when they're being sentenced, they should be told, this is the time you have to serve. But when you come home, this is the work that you can do to have your record expunged. This is what these are which things will be eligible for expungement. This is how long it will take. So when I have to go serve my time, I at least know if I do this correctly, I can come home and I can do the work to have a clean slate when I re-enter my community. And that's just giving someone hope. Kind of sometimes we convict someone of something and there's no hope left for them to say, what will it look like when I come home? So that's one one bill in the package. But another thing when we're talking about housing is one bill in the package is saying that landlords, and I'm a landlord myself, landlords cannot ask about prior records, especially if they have been expunged. So this is an expungement package. So it is looking at things that are eligible for expungement. But if you have done the time and also the work to have your record expunged, a landlord as well as an employer, there's another partner bill of that talks about employers, should not be able to ask about something that should no longer be appearing on your record. And then the third component to that is holding background check companies accountable, that they cannot give that information out, that their information has to be up to date, so within the last 30 days, and also that there are penalties if they are giving expired information. So some of the bills we've seen just say that you cannot give old information, but it doesn't make the penalty lofty enough to make them follow that. So for me, I'm like, they shouldn't be able to just budget this in as well, like, okay, we gotta pay $500 for that, but we'll take that. But like, no, there will be a scale of what happens, and if it keeps reoccurring, how do we address these companies? So I think that there are things that we can put into account, but the larger conversation about criminal records as a whole is one that I would like to be a part of, and just how can we address that as a whole. This is the work that I'm currently doing is around expungements, but we should be having a larger conversation, because if someone has paid their debt to society, we should want to see them coming home and welcoming them and setting them up for success. We know that things like housing and employment, those are basic things that everyone should have access to and everyone should have a right to. And we know that there are certain barriers that we, as legislators, as the holders of these systems, put into place that make that more difficult than it should be. I'm reading my notes because I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else that we were working on. I know a colleague of mine is working on Ban the Box, just, making sure that is a piece. But also with Ban the Box, there are some other legislative pieces that will be connected to that to make sure that, because the box itself is an issue, but there are some other strings to that we need to address. So overall, I'm excited to continue this work. The predecessor from my district is David LeGrand, and he really was a huge supporter of getting that initial expungement package over the line. I'm excited to continue that work and then take it further. So please see me and my office as a partner in this.
We most definitely will. I've been taking my own notes, and it's so exciting and refreshing to have you in position. You mentioned something that I think is really, really important, especially to the peer-led reentry piece. This notion, and it happens in a child welfare system, right? This notion that reentry, right, or aftercare should begin at intake, right? So that way people don't feel like their whole life is thrown down the garbage, like they have something to work towards still. I know that when I was arrested for my crime, I thought that my life was over, and I was told that my life was over, right? And it was actually that motivated me to prove people wrong, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. But that is because I'm very stubborn. Most people aren't as stubborn as me, and they will believe that, and they'll internalize that, and they will not see themselves in a college setting, in a work setting, right, as a business owner, because they've been socialized, they've been told to believe that it's over for them. And they internalize that shame and that guilt, from committing that crime, right? Like, people really do take that, hold themselves accountable, and even when we can't meet our basic needs because of our criminal history, that is shameful, right? I struggled with housing for 2 years, and I was afraid to tell anyone, because it's like everyone's supposed to have a house. It just, to tell people that you don't have anywhere to shower is just like, and they might be more apt to sniff you. So I'm getting sidetracked, but I think that reentry should absolutely start at intake. I love that idea, and we would love to work with you on it. And I love to hear that there's more synergy happening around Clean Slate. So thank you again so much. We do have about 8 minutes left, if I'm not mistaken. If we have any questions from the audience that we want to field, if Veronica, you could send those to me in the chat.
And can I just add one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, also as a legislator, one thing I like to just be upfront about is none of us are an expert in everything. So when I'm listening to the people who are doing the work, a lot of times when people have when they think about a policy that makes them nervous or that gets very convoluted, for me, I'm always saying, just bring me the issue and we'll figure out how to write the policy. But if people have just an issue, let us know what is your question, right? Like say that to us, feel free to email us, pass it along, and we'll do the research of maybe there's another bill or another policy that just needs a word changed or a line changed, but a lot of people think they have to bring me a full policy idea in order to make a difference. A lot of times I just need to know this is a reoccurring issue that is harming people, and we'll go find a way to write the policy around it.
I love that. And just to follow up on that before we get into questions from the audience, last year in Post Clean Slate, we were hearing this term called criminal justice reform fatigue. Is that still a thing amongst legislators? Is that something that people in the policy world have to be worried about this year?
I would say bring us what's important to you. And if the first person that you speak to doesn't have the enthusiasm that you have, go find someone else, right? I know that my office is interested in this work, but I also know so many others that are a part of this session who are excited about it. One thing that's very unique about this session is when we're talking about Democrats, when we're talking about the House as a whole, half of the people there right now are brand new. They haven't been there before. And so that means we are all learning, but you have a lot of people who, haven't been a part of the system. Like, we don't know what to be fatigued about, and we don't know what to say, like, that's too hard. You have a lot of people who are really ambitious and who are really excited to create some change. So take advantage of that. We don't know what the next 2 years holds for us. In the next election, we're hopeful, but we don't know what that looks like, which is another reason why we need people getting to the polls. There's only so much we can do in 2 years. We need 10 years. We need 40 years to clean up a lot of the things that have happened in Michigan. So we need you guys to get there, but also tell us what we can do for you. And moving forward, I want to have a conversation about how I can get you guys over at Kent County Jail, and I'll join you with that.
Oh, we would love that. Coming to Kent County near you. Thank you again, Representative Grant. We appreciate you so much, and we're so optimistic, and we love the new energy that you're bringing into the House. Okay, so now we have about 5 minutes left. Veronica, if you want to send some questions to me in the chat. Okay, from Facebook. Are there particular parts of the legal system that you feel need to be transformed versus reformed? Yes, all of them. There's a continuum, right? And there's different phases of the carceral journey, if you will. And I believe that all aspects of those could use some innovation. Wonder Twin, what do you think about that? Tony Gant.
Right. Whether or not we're talking about transforming or reforming, a lot of the system is so inherently flawed that a lot of it needs to be almost torn down and reestablished in a lot of different ways, which is why we're revolutionizing reentry, because it's just so fundamentally flawed that you almost have to come up with a system specifically designed to address a fundamentally flawed system. In order for that to work, you got to move that flawed system out of the way. I don't think you can just have bring in these solutions to something that's fundamentally flawed and make it work. I think we've tried that over and over again, and it's led to a lot of harm.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the lens, right? That traditional lens that I spoke about earlier, that punitive kind of treatment focus. Let's focus on the individual, the behavior, the choices, right? And it just ignores all these larger system restrictions. And the reason those solutions are designed that way is because that's the lens all the research was filtered through, right? And so if you look back in time, you look at history, you look at when the big spike in prisons and jails and even policing came from, well, it came from emancipation, right? It was born out of the death of slavery, right? It was the new slavery. That's read that book, The New Jim Crow, if you haven't. What efforts are underway to review licensure required jobs in Michigan and which often exclude, I'm sorry, I can't make that one out. What barriers, in your opinion, stand in the way of formerly incarcerated citizens' interest in running for public office? That's a great question. Tony.
You would throw that to me, wouldn't you? Yes. Oh, okay. So it depends on what public office. Just to be honest with you, there are local governments that have clear barriers in place for people with felony convictions in their city charter, right? That prevent you from running for local office. Lansing is one of those places, right? That charter needs to be changed. On a public level, on a state level, I think the law, I was kind of looking at it, if the crime goes in, again, we got these weird phraseologies about goes against public trust and all of these things and good moral character. And it talks about a 20-year span, right? That could bar a person from running for office, which is problematic, right? It's a catch-all, but usually that particular statute only applies if a person committed an offense while in office. So for state level offices, people that have criminal convictions, I think you guys are safe, and I think you guys should run for office. I definitely think we should all be running for
office. And Dearborn, I believe Dearborn too, if Danny Harani's on the call, Danny Harani from Team Wellness is trying to address the Dearborn Charter, which prevents elected officials. We are doing some work in that area. Please catch up with us. Join Nation Outside as a member. Go to our website, nationoutside.org. You guys are awesome and amazing. Thank you so much to our sponsor, dream.org, and Safe and Just Michigan. Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Again, Representative Grant, we cannot wait to come back and talk to you. All right, take care and bye for now.